We have been talking about firms mostly, trying to see performance of firms, and then also uh, try and understand behavior of firms in different markets using data. Now, the next level of analysis in this is to see industry-wise performance.
How do you describe? I mean, how do you describe an industry? What is an industry?
Now, industry is a collection of firms.
Okay.
Now, definition of industry is quite vague in terms of different country contexts as well as activities. So, our first task then would be to define an industry and classify the firms.
All right.
So, the important thing is to develop a taxonomy in terms of how we can actually call
something an industry.
Activities can be clubbed into an industry.
Presumably, the firms have to have something in common, right? So there has to be something alike.
Yeah. Either output in common or input in common, or some common denominator should be there. So, what we shall do today is a classification of industries in the Indian context, basically. And then we will also see what are the sources of data when we want to look at industry level analysis. Now, industry level analysis is very important because broad economic growth projections use industry level data.
Okay.
Second thing is also from an investor's point of view, from a kind of future investments going to sectors decisions, all that actually uses industry level
sectoral
data.
Policies.
It's a very important component of policy. Okay. Now, basically in the Indian context, industries are classified under 5 broad heads. One is in terms of labor, the use of labor. Second, in terms of the use of raw material.
Okay.
Third, ownership, which is very important.
Okay.
Fourth, the source of raw material.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, from where are you getting the raw material?
Okay.
Finally, we club everything into a miscellaneous category.
Okay. Okay.
We'll go one by one. Now, in terms of labor, the most straightforward classification is in terms of large, medium, and small.
I see.
Now, here we find that there are a lot of definitional changes that have taken place over a period of time. For example,
so large, medium, and small is labor related. It's not revenue or something like that.
It's not revenue. Basically,
it's a number of employees.
It's in terms of number of employees.
Oh, I see.
Now, of late, there is also a kind of a discussion where we should also bring in the capital investments.
Oh, okay.
So now the new definitions, especially in the context of small scale industries, uses both capital as well as labor. And in the most recent part, as a part of this recent Atmanirbhar reforms, we have also introduced turnover.
Revenue.
Because in services, small firms, there is a possibility that turnover could be used as a kind of an indicator.
Okay.
So conventional bunching of industries into large, small, and medium is in terms of labor.
How many people
you are employed.
Okay.
In terms of raw material, we use whether it is heavy industries or light industries, and we will come to that in a minute. Ownership is very important in the Indian context because we have a very interesting mix of ownership. Of course, public sector. When we started industrialization, it was
government
owned thrust towards public sector.
Yeah.
Then after the 1991 reforms, we find that there is a shift towards emphasizing the private sector.
Yeah.
Now,
private sector means the ownership is some private individuals.
Private entities, individuals. Yeah. And there's a huge kind of a classification in terms of private firms itself.
But you could have a combination. You could have
various permutations and combinations come there. We won't get into the details of ownership in that level, but private sector as a dominant category.
Yeah.
Then we have a joint sector which is unique for India.
Which is bigger? Is it private sector bigger in India or public sector bigger in India?
Now, of late, private sector is bigger.
Okay.
Yeah, because systematically,
government. But if you take 80s, it would be.
It was dominated by the public sector.
Public sector.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that is the story of economic reforms in
the last 30-40 years.
Yeah. Because we find that from a public sector dominated or public sector oriented industrialization, we have moved to a private sector oriented kind of thing. Now, the unique thing about India is this joint sector. Because India is a mixed economy, a mixed economy where there is, very important roles for market mechanism as well as for planning. There is also a new entity called the joint sector, where there is a partial ownership with the public and a partial ownership with the private, which in new kind of terminology is something like a public-private partnerships, which have come, PPP mode, which have come very, very prominent in recent times.
Right.
Then, of course, the cooperative sector, which now is becoming another important kind of an entity now. And finally, there is a multinational corporation.
Then there are these intermediate things like build, operate, and transfer schemes where from time to be private, then it might become public ownership.
Yeah, but mostly that comes in joint sectors thing.
Okay.
Yeah, because initially it is an agreement, no, that for 2 years you will be having the complete ownership. Then you will transfer that. You will operate for so many years. It's all contractual agreements in that sense.
Okay.
So we find that in terms of ownership, we have these categories of private sector, public sector, joint sector, cooperative sector, and finally a large segment now growing, that is the multinational companies. Now, multinational companies are very important because they bring in FDI as well as a whole lot of benefits associated with that.
Right.
And that cannot be clubbed with the rest of the entities. So that is why we are keeping it as a separate kind of a thing.
So multinationals are foreign firms which have ownership of companies in India.
Yeah, and
they could be 100% owned or partly owned.
No, the conventional definition is anything that is more than 10% ownership.
I see.
Yeah.
So any foreign firm that owns more than 10% of an Indian company
of an Indian entity is termed as
a multinational.
Foreign. Yeah.
Okay.
And it should have operations in more than one country. Yeah. Now, finally, in terms of this miscellaneous category is very important for India because we have a large number of village, cottage industries and ancillary. And so we will quickly go through these industries to have an idea as to what is the kind of definition of industry that is used in different contexts. Now, why we have multiple definitions is very important to understand because multiple definitions arise from different kinds of regulatory regimes that we have. Because certain regulatory regimes...
So, the same company or same company might be actually part of different industry classifications, right?
Yes.
It could be classified as a medium scale heavy industry.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Or a large scale light industry, something like that.
Yes.
Okay.
Because, for each of the regulatory requirements...
They may be in a different place.
And that was one of the major problems that we encountered when we were actually opening up the industrial sector for private players to come.
Okay.
Now, conventionally, large scale, we know there are large number of laborers. Yeah. And, in India, we started off with cotton and jute as the large scale industries historically, pre-independence time onwards. Later on, other large scale industries under
for example.
Steel and other under the public sector's initiatives came up. Medium scale, a lot of that's a very, very important component in Indian context because they're neither very large nor small. They're in the middle. Now, we don't have much of that in India.
We don't have. Okay.
And that's a very unique phenomenon in India because we call it as the missing middle.
And so some countries have a lot of middle.
Some countries have a lot, especially the East Asian and the European economies have large number of this medium scale industries. SMEs, they call it as small and medium enterprises.
We have the missing middle.
We have the missing middle.
Yeah, the small enterprises are very large.
And then we have large.
Okay.
And that is one of the issues that we will have to encounter when we look at industrial growth because, ideally employment generation is coming from this middle quite a bit.
Yeah.
And that's missing. Small industries, we know it is run by individuals.
And medium scale industries tend to they create local employment, right? Because the large scale industries, you can have only few of them.
Yeah.
So the labor will have to travel to work in these large scale industries. Whereas the medium scale industries might be like this Mittelstand in Europe.
Yeah.
They will be in their local villages or regions.
Yes.
So they generate employment locally. Yeah.
The classic example of that is the town and village enterprises of Chinese economy earlier, which absorbed the local labor and created local linkages with the local economy.
Okay.
And small scale industries we discussed in terms of the definition. There have been a lot of changes in terms of definition.
So typically a small scale industry would have how many employees? 5, 10, 15 like that or many more?
So earlier our definition was less than 20 people.
Less than 20.
Less than 20 people without power.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Or less than 10 people
With power. I see.
Yeah. Then we thought that we should also bring in a role for investments in this. So we set the upper cap, 25 lakhs, 50 lakhs, 1 crore, 2.5 crores, like that. Over time, when the economy is undergoing changes, that upper cap for investments also changed. Now, the most recent kind of change in that, in terms of definition, is to bring in turnover also to define a small scale industry. And that is where large number of service sector entities also become, crucial in this segment now. Now, the second kind of a thing, we talked about that, heavy industries, light industries. Well, bulky raw materials are used. Yeah, iron and steel, for example. We have been talking about cement in our firm level analysis.
It will be a heavy industry.
It's a heavy industry. Okay. Light industries use, light finished products, electrical fans, sewing machines.
Textiles would be light industry?
Textile machinery is heavy industry, and ready-made garments is light.
Light industry. Oh, okay.
So that is where the classification becomes very important. Then we, in terms of ownership, we have private sector, public sector, joint sector. We talked about that, and some examples of that we know. For example, Bajaj Auto or Tisco is typically a private sector. Public sector, we know BHEL or BEL or BEML or HMT earlier. All that come under a public sector. Joint sector, we have something like,
Maruti, for example.
Maruti, for example, yeah. And Gujarat Alkalis or Oil India Limited. Yeah. All these come under joint sector. And then finally, the cooperative sector, which is run by a set of people, a cooperative entity.
Amul is
a classic example of that. And a large number of sugar producing cooperatives which contribute to the
sugar tends to be fully cooperative, right? More or less,
yeah. So that's classification on the basis of ownership. Now, then in terms of raw materials, we have agro-based, mineral-based, pastoral-based, and forest-based industries.
Right. Okay.
Now, this was very important in terms of our earlier planning system.
Yeah.
Because allocation of resources,
right,
on the basis of this classification becomes very important.
Right.
So typically, mineral-based assumes very important kind of a role in this, because extraction, how much should we extract?
There's scarcity also.
There's scarcity. There are questions about sustainability. But at the same time, that goes as an input for another industry. So you should have an optimal level of extraction. So that is why the raw material based becomes very important. And examples we know, agro-based, cotton textiles and jute are agro-based. Mineral-based, we have straightforward iron and steel. Pastoral-based are basically hides and skin, and very important in India because one of our important component in exports is hides and leather.
Yeah, we have very high cattle stock, right? Cattle stock is among the highest in the world.
Very high, and we are one of world's leading raw leather exporters. So that's why pastoral-based industries are very important, and forest-based, of course, lac and rayon and things of that sort are important in the Indian context. Then we have a whole lot of miscellaneous kind of a definition that comes in with village industries.
Oh, I see. Okay, this way.
Because there's a department for khadi and village industries, especially. Okay. And that was a kind of a historical evolution of this, because when we had this planning process and then we allocated resources for heavy industries, planners also thought that we should not, give less importance to village industries. So village industries were also given a lot of kind of concessions and access to resources. So village industries become very important. Oil extraction was a major kind of a village industry at some point.
I see. Vegetable oil.
Vegetable oil.
Chakkis. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And then cottage industries, of course, handloom, khadi, and all this become as cottage industries. In terms of modern classifications, we have consumer goods and ancillary industries.
What is ancillary? Consumer goods we know.
Consumer goods we know, where typically bakeries and textiles and things of that sort. Ancillaries are industries where they make parts and components.
Oh, okay.
And these parts and components go into the production of something
other
which
things.
is which is bigger,
Like automobile components.
Automobile.
Somebody who makes a tire or
which goes to the trucks or buses or the big industries kind of thing. Now, this is very important in the Indian context again, because it is this ancillary industries that finally feed to the large kind of a thing, large industries. And generally, the small and medium enterprises tend to operate in the ancillary industries.
Right.
So if you don't have that middle part, then the kind of inputs that are required for the heavy industries will face it. There will be a problem.
You'll have to import it.
We'll have to import it. And that's one of the problems which we see in the Indian context. In terms of an alternate classification, again, we have basic industries, capital intensive and labor industry. That's a straightforward classification.
We have seen it already. Textile and cement is capital.
Cement is capital. Iron and steel is capital. Labor intensive also we saw, because textiles is labor intensive. And basic industries, where basic industries is very important because the value addition in terms of production process is not very high. Because you're having only one.
That's why they call basic.
That's why it is basic. You are having only one kind of a production process. Further value addition is not taking place.
I see. Okay.
So this is very important because if an economy focuses on this kind of industries, then the prospects for growth is also limited, because it's the value addition that finally creates growth. But these are very important for the economy at large, because a lot of important industries like iron and steel
are basic.
Are basic industries. But
of course, today steel is specialized. I mean, you make specialized steel. So
but
there's a lot of value addition that can happen in steel.
But
iron,
that's at that finishing product end, But the iron part of that is still very
basic. Okay.